fill that gap that SADA has done so amazingly over the years, and hosting, the conference of the year. And so anyway, we decided to keep the theme, which was really appropriate, Stronger Together. And we've had some amazing lectures this week, and we've kept the best till last. That's the good news. So some of you might know me. I'm Dr. Mark Bowes. I'm actually the scientific chairman. And I've had the pleasure of inviting Dr. Ricardo Mitrani, who practices in Mexico, to speak this evening. And again, his topic that he's going to be addressing on us is how to create a new vision. Just a few housekeeping rules. Your CPD points will be available on the SADA platform. For those of you who aren't SADA members, it's time to join. And you can create a profile for yourself, and you will be able to get those credits, which will be one clinical CEU. So Dr. Ricardo Mitrani is one awesome speaker. I have to say, we are very privileged to have him this evening. He received his degree at the university in Mexico City. He has a certificate in prosthodontics, as well as a Master of Science Dentistry from the University of Washington. He has served as a graduate on the prosthetics program and assistant director during the year 2001. He holds numerous affiliations, one at the University of Washington is recently, and is at the Spear Education faculty in Scottsdale, Arizona. He is a member of a number of different organizations, the American Academy of Aesthetic Dentistry, the American Academy of Restorative Dentistry. He's on the editorial board for numerous journals, the Aesthetic Journal of Restorative Dentistry, the Journal of Cosmetic Dentistry, as well as the executive director at Spear Digest. And I've read numerous articles of his, and certainly in the future, if you see his name, pay attention and read those articles. What really impresses me is that he has given close to 600 lectures around the globe. So we're in for a treat tonight. And he maintains a private practice limited to prosthodontics, implants, and aesthetic dentistry in Mexico City. But more importantly, I have to be honest, he's just one awesome human being. So I'm not going to waste any more time. I'm going to hand over to Dr. Mitrani and ask him to share his screen and give us his presentation. So thank you, Ricardo, for being with us this evening. We really appreciate that.
Oh, my God. Thank you. Thank you so much, Mark. It's certainly a pleasure to be here today. Let's see if this is getting to work. So, all right, it seems like it does work.
Perfect.
So give me a second. All right. Well, thank you again so much, Mark, for such a warm introduction. I have to say that I'm very humbled as I see the number of participants that are joining us this evening in South Africa, this morning here in Mexico City. You know, I'd be remiss if I didn't share some a couple of insights with you before I begin. And one of the reasons why I'm so excited of presenting to you all today is that you know, South Africa is this place that has lived in my mind for many, many years. I first started hearing about South Africa because my mom lived in South Africa for a couple of years. So my grandfather was working in a transnational company, so they moved him from one country to the other. And my mom lived, you know, in South Africa for her last couple of years in high school. And she always expressed her fond memories about her time in South Africa. Now, my mom passed away 20 years ago. or actually 18 years ago. And so I wanted to refresh the memory that I had from what you told me about South Africa. So sure enough, I reached out to my uncle, whom I hadn't spoken for a long, long time. And so I said, Uncle Mike, I'm lecturing to the South African Dental Association next week, and I wanted to visit with you and hear again, how was your time there? Because to me as a speaker, it's so important to feel close to the audiences that I'm speaking to. And again, in particular here with South Africa, since I had all these memories that my mom used to tell me, but since I haven't had it for such a long time, I had to hear it from somebody that lived with her at that point, which was my uncle. So sure enough, because of you guys, I reconnected with an uncle who is in his 80s, getting older. And, sometimes we're not, we don't do enough to be close to our loved ones. And so because of you, I was able to reach out to my uncle and had the most amazing conversation. And among other things, he told me about his great experience in South Africa. And in many ways, it rang a bell because growing up in Mexico and over the years having so many South African friends in the US, I've always seen so many similarities as a country in South Africa and in Mexico. And so, again, another disclaimer here that South Africa and lecturing in South Africa has always been part of my bucket list. And so today, at least we're doing this virtually. So I'm very, very excited to share some ideas with you. I'm really excited about the Q&A session where we're going to have some interaction. We've been doing quite a bit of virtual lecturing over the last 6 months or 8 months. And, the silver lining that we truly have found is our ability to interact through Q&A. So I'm going to be lecturing for a little bit less than an hour, but then I would really, really enjoy, visiting with you and hearing out what you have to say about these concepts and ultimately building something as a group. And so before I start, though, I do want to thank my dear friend, Mark Bowes, for thinking about me and for inviting me to lecture, not about dentistry per se, but to lecture on this topic that is so near and dear to me. So, when you're invited to a meeting that's called Stronger Together and the power of a team, I think you guys hit the nail in the head. I truly believe that we're living through such uncharted times that embracing the concept of team building, teamwork, and stronger together is truly the name of the game. I think as a humanity, we have a tremendous opportunity to revisit, to rethink, to reinvent ourselves and truly understand the whys, why working as a team, it is so important. Now, as Mark pointed out, today I'm very privileged because I'm, part of two teams. On the one hand, I am privileged to be part of my team here in Mexico, and we have a few practices, and I'm very privileged to lead our team here. On the other hand, I'm incredibly lucky to be part of perhaps one of the most robust platforms of dental education in the world, which is Spear Education. And so to me, to be able to navigate from my practice, from my group practice, back to Spear has allowed me to learn so much. And so this is the reason why I'm so excited, because I get to share with you some ideas, some concepts that stem from my learning in these two both arenas, if you will. So at Spear, I have the distinct privilege of lecturing alongside with Dr. Frank Spear, Dr. Greg Kinzer, who is my classmate from the University of Washington. But as you saw in the picture, Spear Education is way more than the faculty. We have a company of over 200 people working there. And so this gives me and has given me a totally different understanding, of what a big enterprise looks like, and the importance of communicating better amongst the different divisions, the different segments. And as I said, today we're doing most of our lecturing, or if not all of our lecturing, virtually, which has opened up a totally new avenue of communicating, very challenging to say the least. I was hearing the other day, Professor Yuval Noah Harari, who is probably many of you have heard the name or have read the book. He's written numerous books like Sapiens or Homo Deus or 21 Lessons for the 21st Century. At any rate, Professor Harari teaches grad students at the Hebrew University in Jerusalem. And he was talking about Zoom the other day. He was talking about the complexity of lecturing via Zoom, and how taxing and how exhausting it is, to be able to not be able to see the audience. You cannot see if people are there, if they're laughing at your jokes, if they're following you. So it really becomes very, very challenging. You almost have full concentration looking at the camera, thinking about your slides. It's very, very challenging, and yet it gives us this opportunity. It gives us the opportunity today to be able, for me to be sitting in my office and to be lecturing to you guys, in the other side of the world, which I find pretty fascinating. So, as I said, Mexico is home for us, and Mexico City is a beautiful, beautiful city that would definitely invite you guys, once traveling restrictions are lifted, to come and visit. You'll be amazed by the culture. You'll be amazed by the gastronomy. You'll be amazed by the art. But more importantly, you'll be amazed by our people, which, again, that's why I'm so much looking forward to going to South Africa, because that's what I hear about you guys as well. And so when it comes to practice, as I said, we have a group practice. This here is an image of our main practice here in the city. And again, I could not go anywhere without acknowledging that everything that I do is part of the endeavor of a fantastic team of clinicians, team members that are assistants, technicians, office managers. And so again, kudos and my utmost gratitude to everybody in our team. Now, I will be sharing with you some articles, and perhaps during the Q&A, I could upload, in the chat button, some of the links of the articles. But if you want to reach out and, ask for links or whatever, here you can see my email address and my Instagram account. Today, we've become pretty frequent users in Instagram. It seems to have become one of the medium to communicate universally. So again, please feel free to reach out if you have any comments or if you have any questions once we're done with the lecture. So as we dive into the topic here, we're talking about team building. We're talking about stronger together. I'd love to ask a rhetorical question, which is, what do you see when you look in the mirror? And of course, I cannot see a show of hands. That would be ideal. But if I were there, I would ask you, and I would be looking for a show of hands as to who sees a leader. And what does being a leader become or means today? Well, in an office or in a business, being a leader becomes a whole host of things, right? One of the things that I've learned with Spear, that companies have all sorts of fancy names within the C-level, if you will. We have CEOs, we have CFOs, or chief financial officers, we have chief operation officers, we have chief marketing officers, we have human resources directors, and we have all sorts of titles which, of course, encompass or have the need to be filled in by a person who has to see himself or herself as a leader. And so with that in mind, I want to share with you some thoughts that I put together for a lecture that we did during our Spear Summit a few months ago, which has to do with creating a quote unquote new vision for the practice. Now, a lot of these ideas were part of a publication that we have in our Spear Digest that, again, you're all more than welcome to access. And as I said, I can send you a link later on, or probably the easiest way is just to Google, the title with my name, Creating a New Vision for Your Dental Practice, and my name. That'll take you directly to the article. And then once you're in the article, if you were to hit my name, that right there is going to bring a whole host of different articles that I'm going to be also quoting today, or other articles, should you want to take a look at them. And so, you know, when you put a lecture, you typically don't want to go beyond three things that you tell an audience. If you go 4 and beyond, you lose them. If you go less than 3, it's not enough. So typically, a good lecture, and this is something that I learned by some of my mentors like Frank Spear or Vincent Kokich, or some great mentors that I had at the University of Washington. By the way, I had tremendous faculty from South Africa as well. You know, we had Dr. Herb Silipsky, great South African periodontist, very close friend, Leon Hermanides, technician from South Africa as well. Of course, the David Garbers, of course, you know, the Ed Rosenbergs. And, you know, for the last years, I've built very nice relationships with some incredible clinicians that live in South Africa. Of course, my very close friend, Howie Gluckman. I met Jonathan Dutoit last year in Hungary, and I fell in love with his work and his passion for teaching. Mark, of course. I mean, so many incredible South African ambassadors of dentistry out there. In any event, here you'll find the articles that I'm talking to you about, and hopefully you will find some use. But we're talking about the 3 topics a lecture should comprise. And so when we're talking about creating a new vision strategy, we got to think about 3 things. So the first thing here has to do with understanding our patients' changing needs. And I think today with COVID, this holds true more than ever. This notion of changing needs, not only with our patients, but also the whole environment that surrounds us. The second strategy is going to be to nurture our team. You know, visit the concept of team being king, team being everything, you know, as far as our engine to create something. And last but not least, we should focus on executing consistently. So I'm going to be breaking out these 3 subtopics throughout the lecture. And so again, we have to address the elephant in the room, if you will. We have to embrace the fact that a whole host of things have happened, you know, in this so-called COVID era. And it is an era because we will remember these times, you know, and these times will be remembered from generations to come. Because I think it's fair to say that we've never lived through something like this on a global scale. These people from my generation, and of course I'm a Gen X person, and I'd be interested to see what are the demographics, you know, that are sharing this moment with us. And I see we have 362 participants. Wow, I'm blown away and I'm humbled. And I hear that you guys need to listen to your president very soon, later tonight. So I'm going to try to wrap up beforehand so you can listen to your president as he's addressing your nation. But the bottom line here is, you know, this era is certainly characterized by uncertainty, a lot of confusion, and a lot of fear. And of course, I throw in the word global because there's nobody around the world that is not feeling this at one or another way. And a lot of questions, you know, around this uncertainty. So going back to how this affects our enterprise, you know, the dental industry, the dental office. Well, I don't know about you, but I have a solid suspicion that you're seeing something similar to what we are seeing here in this Western Hemisphere, which is, you know, the patients are confusing the dental chair to that chair of the therapist. I was just talking to Mark and Marilise and Zippo about, you know, how patients are coming to the dental office, and sure enough, this has become the cool place in the city. You know, we still are going through some sort of we have restrictions, and we have a full-blown pandemic here. We have very bad numbers of, you know, the infection has very high numbers, and also the mortality rate is pretty high. And so we are in a state of alarm. And so sure enough, patients come, and they come to the dental office because we are a safe place for our patients. And so sure enough, we are now, entertaining patients that want to share their hearts and share their minds. And it's becoming very humbling, and it's becoming very interesting. In fact, I talk to my therapist patients about this, and I'm like, we are now hearing all these personal stories about our patients, and sometimes we don't know exactly what would be the best route to take. How do we help our patients out? And so they normally go out and say, well, the fact that you're listening to them is already pretty big. And so again, my assumption is that you guys are going through the same. And so the name of the game has to be to listening, and to listening thoroughly. Now, last year, I wrote this article. Little did we know back then that we were going to be facing a pandemic, on patient communication in the age of information. And again, same deal. You could either ask me for the link or just go ahead and text the title with my name, and that'll take you to the article. And so what we found, or what we thought made sense, is to break up the communication issues that we have at this day and age with these three. On the one hand, information overload, which is huge. And today, I guess, when it comes to COVID and when it comes to so many other things, it holds true more than ever. Secondly, confirmation bias. I mean, we are fed through the internet with information that somebody is selecting this for us, and because they know that that's what we want to hear. And lastly, there's quite a bit of immediate gratification going on, and so again, this is amplified with COVID. Now, last year I took this picture of a newspaper that was waiting for me in my outside my hotel room in Scottsdale, where I go and teach at Spear. And so, one-page ad from the Wall Street Journal that says, you can't give customers what they want if you don't listen to what they say. Now, this is an ad from SAP. You can only imagine the amount of money they spend for a full-page ad in the Wall Street Journal. And so you can only imagine how much money they spent on the actual ad, the marketing people that thought about this quote. And so we're hearing over and over our need to listen to our patients. We need to listen to, everybody around us. Now, let's assume for the sake of discussion that you can tell me, well, Ricardo, but I want to listen, but not every patient wants to talk. So what then? Well, if we have somebody in our chair that does not want to talk, that does not mean in any way, shape, or form that that person is eager to communicate, but we have to make them feel more comfortable. And we need to be good interviewers, so that we get, insights and information that is incredibly useful for us to create that very needed engagement with our patients. And so a couple of years ago, I put together a module for Spear called, Are We Asking the Right Questions? Because I wholeheartedly believe that it is through asking the right questions where, we truly are, tapping on, the potential of discovery that otherwise it just stays silent. And so the why behind the asking questions, well, I really believe that good questions can improve everything around us. For sure, they can improve the way that we connect with our patients. But circling back with our theme here of stronger, we're better, and circling back with team, I mean, by asking better questions, we can empower and motivate our staff and our team. Lastly, good questions will definitely impact or influence the way that we act or that we interact with our interdisciplinary team. And so we've been talking about these notions. So we need to ask questions, and there's levels of anxiety within our patients and our team members. And another interesting thing is to see how we respond differently to what's happening. And one interesting pattern, or a whole set of patterns that are interesting to follow, are based on when we were born. And so, it's interesting. We see this picture here taken in the pre-pandemic time, and some of us could almost cringe to see how nobody here is enforcing social distancing, right? And on the other hand, we can't wait for this to happen again because we are social creatures. And so, again, how do we process information based on when we were born? Because when we were born dictates, different contexts. And so because of the context of when we were born, we also behave differently. And our habits of consumption are also different. And so this is very interesting because, and I don't mean to label the population, but I do believe that we need to see patterns that will influence the way that we communicate with those around us, because it allows us to understand people better based on, again, the context of when were they born, what have they been exposed to. And from that end, I think we can develop empathy to a total next level, and our communication skills can be improved as well. So with that in mind, I put together some team meetings for SPEAR that I talk about the concept of utilizing personas to optimize our patient's journey. And so again, not labeling, but through pattern recognition, kind of like seeing, the different types of personalities that come and visit us in our office. So you have, on the one hand, Timmy the millennial, and there's nothing wrong with being a millennial, but there are certain traits within the behavior of millennials. How about Mrs. Jones, the elderly patient? She's a widower, elderly patient. We communicate with them differently. By the way, our elder population, are truly struggling in COVID because they have become, the age bracket that are, at so much risk, for having a rough time or even dying from COVID. And so we really have to address this and be very careful on how we communicate with these individuals. How about Kate, the housewife? She comes to the office, and again, I don't mean to label anybody, but I mean just the persona that comes to the office. The housewife, or the super busy mom that's looking after her kids. She has a whole host of traits that we also need to see so we can communicate with them differently. Or Kate or Bob, the business person. Again, executive business people that have a different agenda. They need to be in and out of the office at different speeds. We need to communicate with them differently. Or how about Tom, the builder? And I'm talking here the engineers that come and visit us in office, and we know that communicating with engineers is a totally different ballgame, right? They understand what we do in dentistry. They understand about, yield strength. They understand about alloys. They understand about materials. They understand about AP spread. They understand about so many concepts that we utilize in implant dentistry and tooth-supported dentistry from their engineering background, right? And so from this, we develop a specific communication strategy. Now, our communication strategy basically has three pillars. On the one hand, as I said, we need to reduce our patients' anxiety. On the other hand, we need to maintain engagement and trust. As I said, our patients are coming to the office, and we need to make sure that they trust what we do. They trust who we are. They trust that whatever treatment we're offering to them is in their best interest. And lastly, of course, our communication strategy should also focus on increasing future case acceptance. Now, in order for all this to happen, we need to somehow engage emotionally with our patients. And so, again, I wrote a piece on how do we create this emotional connection with the patients. Well, guess how we do that? Well, this basically has to do with the second pillar of creating a new vision. This has to be done by nurturing our team, because we do not create engagement with patients only, by the dentist, the solo practitioner. It is a team endeavor. And so this is why, it is so important in so many ways and at so many levels, to make sure that we nurture our team. Last year, I was giving a conference on the biggest challenges that we face as clinicians. And there was a very interesting group of high-end clinicians that I was lecturing to at SPEAR. And we collectively came up with the biggest challenge in practice. So if we were to choose one, people chose, and this is not me, this was, a workshop of like close to 40 dentists. And they all agree that one of the biggest challenges is to have a cohesive, caring, and efficient team. I'm going to say this again. The biggest challenge is to have a cohesive, caring, and efficient team. Now, I've been talking all this time, and again, I cannot see your faces, but I see we have 371 participants, at least with their computers on. So I need to throw this out at you. So why should you listen to me? Why would I be the expert on, team building? Well, I certainly do not consider myself an expert, but I'll tell you one thing. I thoroughly enjoy this quote by Niels Bohr that says that an expert is a man who has made all the mistakes which can be made in a narrow field. Well, I don't know if I made every mistake, but I can tell you I've made a ton of mistakes. And I want to share with you these mistakes because that's the only way that I believe you will listen to me and we can have a discussion once we're done. Because there are certainly quite a few mistakes. So as Mark pointed out, I did my training, my PROS training at the University of Washington. And for those of you older dentists like Mark and myself, you will notice here in this slide, these are slides, by the way. Many of the younger dentists probably have not seen slides, but this is the way we used to take pictures. And this is dated. This is me right here. And the date is, October of '97 when I was a full-blown grad student at the University of Washington. And so when I actually chose to come back and start my practice in Mexico in the year 2001, and by the way, I practiced for 6 years before doing my training, and during those 6 years, I practiced with my older brother, who was a fantastic clinician and an even more fantastic human being. So when I came back, though, in 2001, we decided to work in separate practices so that we could both have our own operations. So something to be said about Mexico City, and here you can see two of our beautiful volcanoes on a clear morning, is that it has its very special nuances when it comes to dentistry. Mexico City is a city of contrasts, just like South Africa, or most cities, mainstream cities in South Africa, right? But the one thing that we have here is that because we're so close to the US, Mexico City has the largest amount of US-trained dental specialists, either periodontists, orthodontists, prosthodontists, oral surgeons. And so when I came back, there was nobody really waiting for me anxiously to come and see me as patients. So as I said, I used to practice with my brother when I started my own practice. I mean, I initially started working in another practice that took me, a very large practice. And I was basically doing some of the dentistry that I learned at the University of Washington, but I was doing my thing. I didn't quite integrate in that other practice. So at the time being, I was writing articles and publishing quite a bit of dental information, in journals. I wrote some book chapters here and there. And so when I moved to my own office, which was in 2005, I was struggling, to survive. I was struggling to make a living in dentistry, and trying to tell my patients that the type of dentistry that I did was, interdisciplinary, and I could do things that, could be good for them. But once again, they were not really looking for a specialist because there are a ton of specialists here. So I have to slowly work my way and let patients know that I had something special that potentially they could see as special. At the same time, I was trying my best to be a father of these three young kids in 2005, who now have grown quite a bit. And as I said, the name of my game was to do interdisciplinary management. And this right here is going to be the only clinical slide of my presentation. But to give an idea, this is the type of dentistry that I was, and I am pursuing every day, dentistry that has to do with working as a team with orthodontists, with surgeons, with technicians, and to be able to help our patients out. And so that's the type of stuff that I was lecturing on. And so I was very lucky to be able to lecture nationally and internationally. And I was able to, grow as a speaker. And for sure, there's a lot of glamour when you say that you lecture around the world. But, it all boils down to how you want to tell the story. Because as I was lecturing all over the place, meanwhile, my practice was not even close to being functional. My practice back then was the ultimate dysfunctional practice. And the reason why I can attest wholeheartedly that this was the ultimate dysfunctional team, it's because there's a fantastic book out there called The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, a great book by author Patrick Lencioni. And these 5 dysfunctions are absence of trust, fear of conflict, lack of commitment, avoidance of accountability, inattention to results. Well, guess what? We had them all. We scored a perfect 10. In a nutshell, back then I was the light of the street. And this is a Mexican quote that I hope you embrace. I was the light of the street, but I was the darkness at my home. All this time I thought that my staff, knew exactly what I was lecturing on. They knew exactly where I was. They understood my mindset. I would pretty much communicate everything that was going on in my life through osmosis. But no, I was lecturing. I would come back to a busy practice. Back then, I was very interesting. I was very interesting because it was all about me. And I had to tell my story to my staff and to my patients. And things change the way you stop being interesting and you start being interested in the others. And so what I started doing was I started reading all these books on, on team building, and these books on, and by the way, the business was a mess. Financially, I was close to bankruptcy because I couldn't handle all the bills that we had here. And we had, patients coming in, but, I did not have all that it took, to create all the parameters that needed to be working to have a practice that was efficient, right? And so again, I started working, I started reading, and lo and behold, I got myself a guru. And I don't have a lot of time to tell you exactly how it happened, but sure enough, one day in my dental chair, there's this gentleman who happened to, he was born in Kenya, by the way. His name is Al-Nur Kasem. He's a fantastic gentleman who happened to be in my dental chair and who happens to be a business coach. And by the way, today Al-Nur is, he's actually a monk, and he lives in Kathmandu. But sure enough, he was a business coach. He was back then he was a very business-oriented person. So he said, Ricardo, I hear you, I see you, I sense you. You have something special, but you're a mess. So let's go ahead and see. I'm going to help you out here with one session. So what are you? He asked me, who are you? What are you? What do you do? I'm like, what do you mean? Well, you're in my chair. You know that I'm a dentist. He says, no. I want to know who you are so I can help you. So I started, having this conversation. He started doing probing questions. And sure enough, I said, well, I'm a family person. And, I guess I'm a social person. He says, but who are you really? Well, I give lectures. That's my passion is in education. And it says, but you run a practice, right? So you're a business person? Well, yeah, I'm a business person. So he writes all these down and he goes, would you be kind enough to prioritize them? What are you first? And so if you know me a little, you'll know that I document everything. So this right here is a picture that I took of that whiteboard. And here's a picture of my cell phone that took the picture so I can share with you kind of like how I have this. And this right here, if I see the date here, it says December 8, 2013. And you'll notice here that I prioritize this by putting number 1 in family. Oops. Number 2, I said I cannot kid myself. I'm an educator. The one thing that I enjoy the most is sharing knowledge. My late father was a professor at the university and he taught me to teach. And I wanted to be a musician earlier on, so I taught music. And so to me, being able to convey information was always, where I got the juice from. And then, of course, I became a dentist, probably by just following up on the example of my brother. And I enjoy dentistry a lot. But that's where I kind of see with this whiteboard where my heart was. And so then he said, we need to fix you because you're a mess. Financially, you're almost broke. And so we need to fix you. So we started doing a whole host of things, starting from, measuring, because if you don't measure stuff, you cannot manage it. And I was not measuring anything. And you got to measure everything. So we got to go through metrics. We got to go through daily huddles. We got to go through weekly meetings. In fact, today we have daily huddles and we have weekly meetings. And to be honest with you, that's what holds my practice in place. I couldn't see myself doing it otherwise. But then something else happened as I was, picking up the practice and getting to a much better space. And what happened was that I joined Spirit Education as part of the faculty group. And so it meant that now I was not going to be lecturing so much around the world. I was going to be focusing most of my lecturing in one place. But it also meant for me to be in touch, as I said, with a huge organization. And this, by the way, is our auditorium where we teach when campus is open. And so, again, I then was in contact with all these amazing people that allowed me to learn and to bring all these learnings to the office. And so then I wrote an autobiographic piece called The Power of Renovation, which, again, you can check it out the same way as I told you, or just log in, once you go to a Spirit Digest, or I can send you the link. And so when I wrote this article in 2016, I said there's 3 steps, fundamental steps for renovation. And these steps, of course, have to do with, we got to renovate our workspace, we got to renovate our team, we got to renovate our mindset. So, of course, the workspace is very simple. You can notice how the practice looked back then, pretty retro, and then just a matter of having good taste and money, and you renovate it, right? The key was renovating the team, because as I told you, the team was not 100% on board with me. So I had to make sure they were on board. And so I took a course by a fantastic speaker from Argentina, who's a team builder. And he says, more often than not, you have to rethink about your team, and eventually you need to fire your team. Like, what do you mean you fire them? Yeah, I mean, you come one day, confront your team and let everybody know that they're fired. With a caveat here, you are going to conduct a process of rehiring contingent upon what they tell you. Why would they want to be rehired? And this right here became a very interesting exercise, for me to have this conversation with a team. In fact, going back to what I told you a while ago, the biggest the challenge being having a cohesive, caring, and efficient team, now became not the challenge, but became our biggest goal, to have a cohesive, caring, and efficient team. And so I stumbled upon this fantastic book called The Ideal Team Player, once again by Patrick Lencioni. And I would urge you to read this book, which is a fantastic book. And basically, the ideal team player has not 2, not 4, but 3 characteristics, which are humble, hungry, and smart. And so the ideal team player lives right here in the middle of these 3. If you want to have an ideal team, it's got to be comprised of players that have these 3 traits. Because if they only have 2, they're not ideal. So you may want to check this book out, because to me, it serves so much. And these 3 patterns, or these 3 traits, are so objectively looked at. You don't need to be that subjective to have this conversation within your team, because everybody can understand humble. Humble as in, I know that I'm good, but I don't need to rub it on everybody's face. Hungry as in, I'm ambitious. I want to grow. I'm not comfortable where I'm at. I want to grow. And smart as in interpersonal smart. I know what does it take, to flow with a group of people, right? Which led me, during my renovation of our office, to find this quote, which I found it to be, the epitome of the team that I wanted to put together. This is a quote by Norman Schittle, and it's right out here in one of our walls. And it reads, "A group becomes a team when each member is sure enough of himself or his contribution to praise the skills of others." Think about this. And so the bottom line is, if you want to have a team that truly behaves as a team, you need to involve the team. And going back to that chart of, when we were born, we gotta embrace the fact that perhaps not everybody in your team was born, in the same context of events. And so that way, we also need to tone down or modify the way we communicate with our team members. But something beautiful stemmed from this. In fact, there's a beautiful quote from the Talmud that says, "I have learned much from my teachers, more from my colleagues, but the most from my students." And so if I can extrapolate students from my staff now, I can tell you that, to me, every day that I come to work is a day of discovery, because we've set the ground for everybody to come in as a teacher and as a student. And so there's this notion, the Talmud mentioned like this. Today we call it reverse mentoring, right? And so I'd urge for you to embrace this concept. And the concept of reverse mentoring is nothing that new. In fact, GE's Jack Welch introduced this concept, in his company, General Electric. They utilized reverse mentoring back then when they had junior members teaching senior executives about the internet at a time in which, the older executives were clueless regarding the internet. The other amazing thing that I have to share with you that has happened over the course of the last 5 to 6 years is actually I started mentoring a young clinician when he graduated from dental school 10 years ago. And he then went to a specialty training. And through my mentoring, he went to the right places, University of Southern California for his pros training. Then he went ahead and did an surgical training in Louisville, Kentucky. And then he came back and he became my partner. And so This guy right here is Jack Goldberg, and he's my partner now in practice, junior partner. But he's the epitome of reverse mentoring. You know, I'm supposed to be 20 years older, and I'm supposed to be the guy that teaches him. Well, I can tell you there's so few things that today I teach him, and there's so much that he teaches me. And so that's the spirit that we have in our office, and everybody, you know, is able to embrace it. And so that's the type of energy that I want you guys to start thinking about. Another great book called Collective Genius, which is the art and practice of leading innovation. And, you know, the authors talk about this notion of unleash and harness, which means you want to hear everybody's voice, because everybody will have a great thing to say about, you know, how the practice is run. But then you will need to harness this information and to be able to create, you know, what are your solid guiding principles. So, but they have to stem from the group. They have to stem from the different players of the group. Because when we start adding one guiding principle to another, and to another, what we actually end up having is this so-called business culture. And so we need to cultivate this business culture in our offices. Once again, it has to be done collectively. Not monotone, not one voice, but multiple voices. You see, Carl Dweck, who's a behavioral psychologist in Stanford University, has a great book called Mindset. 2 types of mindset, a growth mindset and a fixed mindset. Well, to be honest with you, this does not only stay within the individual, this transpires to a full practice or to a full business. So there are practices with a fixed mindset, and there are practices with a growth mindset. Now, I know there are some specialists, hopefully today, in our virtual classroom here. I spoke to my friend Howie Gluckman a while ago, and you know, this is something that I'm pretty sure the staff from Howie or other specialists would say. You know, we love getting patients from X, Y, or Z. And yet, we struggle getting patients from Dr. X, Y, or Z. Why is this? Because there's this business culture that that transpires through the practice into the patients. And so patients come to different offices with this engraved or encrypted culture. And your practice may be one of them. So take a look at this interesting finding from Bain Consultant Company, which talks about the quality of customer experience. You see, they went ahead and surveyed a bunch of companies, and they found that 80% of those organizations believed that they were delivering a superior experience, only to be contrasted to what the actual customers believed. So you'll notice how the number drops from 80% all the way to 8%. So this is a reality check for so many companies, including so many of our colleagues or so many of us. So just think about this, because this may very well be our office or your office. Another thing to think about is, I love this quote by Sam Altman. Sam Altman is, he put together one of the most robust startup incubators in all of Silicon Valley called Y Combinator, which means that these guys have seen so many startups, and he's been able to review, you know, what works and what doesn't work within a startup. And as you know, there are hundreds and hundreds of startups to see very few flourish, very few be successful. So Sam Altman says that the secret of having a successful startup is to build a product or a company that is so good, people will want to run and tell their friends about it. So it has to do with the experience. And so who curates the experience? Not the doctor, but the whole team. Now, another very important trait is that for somebody to go out of his or her way to talk about the experience, this experience has to be consistent to what others are saying, right? Because if somebody goes to your office and has a great experience because of one thing, and somebody else comes to your office and has the same consistent experience and talks about it as somebody else, that right there creates such tremendous energy, such incredible power that the message transpires to more people out there that would want to come see you in your office. And I'm pretty sure this resonates to practices like of Mark Bowes, like Jonathan DeToy, so many of you out there that I know are successful because patients are getting a consistent experience. Which leads us to our third pillar of creating the new vision, which has to do with focusing in consistent execution. So you see, it's a very linear process that I've been walking you through. So when we talk about consistent execution, there's this great book called From Good to Great by Jim Collins. And they mention the so-called Hedgehog principle. Because for us to be able to have a consistent message from our patients, we got to be great. And great lives when we have these three things happening. We're passionate about what we do. We can be the best at something. And it definitely is driving our financial engine. We cannot be a successful practice. We cannot create a consistent experience for patients if we don't have financial stability. This has to hold true in everything that we do. Now, what does consistency mean? Well, it means something different in different worlds. Now, I know South Africa is big in rugby and in other sports. In the US, they have baseball. And as you know, baseball is a sport of statistics. And it's very interesting because they measure everything. And so, there's the batter that's going to hit the ball. And you know what happens if you hit the ball 1 out of every 3 times you are at bat? Once out of every 3 times, that player is going to the Hall of Fame. 1 out of every 3. So how do we get consistent execution in the practice? Well, if you read the white letters here that are almost faint, and they're faint on purpose, because if you read, there's one of my favorite quotes in life. And it reads, "The problem with the obvious is that it is not that obvious." If we want to have consistent execution, again, we need to look back at what we've been talking about. If we want to be consistent, something needs to live in my brain and everybody in my organization brain every day. If we have things differently laid out in our brains, then there's no way we can be consistent, which means we need to have to be in sync. We need to calibrate our minds. And the best way to calibrate our minds is if we walk into our office every morning with the same mission and with the same vision, regardless of who we are, regardless if you're the chief, if you are the leader, if you are, the cleaning person, we all have to understand what is the mission of the company, of the office that we work in. We all need to understand the vision. So with that in mind, last year, I brought my staff, and guess what? We revisited what is our mission and our vision. And my assumption is that many of you may have it in your office, but with COVID, it's a perfect opportunity to revisit this notion and to rewrite a mission and a vision statement. But ones that we live by, one that we think about every single day when we come to practice. So again, this article here lives in our digest. You're more than welcome to visit it. And as I said, just write the title and my name. That'll take you through Google. Or the other best way is once you're in our Spear Digest, if you hit my name, you're going to see all these articles scroll down. But let me share with you what we wrote. More importantly, who writes the mission and the vision? Not the boss. Everybody. Remember about the guiding principles? Well, they have to live somewhere. They have to be implicit in that mission and vision. And so let me share with you what we had. And here is where I link my two teams, GDB or Grupo Dental Bosque and Spear Education, because there had to be a common understanding of how one of the two groups would feed from the other and how the other one would feed from the other. Because that duality that we have as a practice, being faculty at Spear Education, and as faculty at Spear Education, being able to run a private practice allows me to see things that I never saw before. And so how do we link them? Well, they have to be very compatible. So you'll notice that our mission statement is we improve our patients' quality of life through three different filters or three different stages. First of all, education. So everybody in our office is an educator. Number two, through prevention. We truly do our best to educate our patients within a preventative mindset. They understand what's on stake if they have a preventive mindset. And of course, we improve our patients' quality of life through the best available treatment. So again, I would urge you to revisit or to visit this article and hopefully compare it to your mission and your vision. So I'm just about to wrap up here. The last of the aspects that we need to renovate, as I said, is a mindset. And when you run, a busy practice, sometimes we feel like we're juggling too many things, right? And that's why it is so important to come to terms with that. In the business world, it is this so-called SWOT analysis that I think it's worth, going through. And it's worth asking, how many hats are you guys wearing? Because for sure you can be the clinician, the leader, and the business person, three different things. And through these, it is important for us to identify what are our strengths, our opportunities, our weaknesses, and our threats from each one of these hats that we potentially may wear. And then be able to work accordingly. Now, this also holds true depending on where you are at in private practice. And if we have close to 400 people that are watching this, most likely all of you are living in different stages of practice. And years ago, Frank Spear taught me what are the 4 stages of practice. And I hope they resonate with you. Now, these 4 stages do not necessarily mean that they're linear. It means that there are 4 different stages where you may find yourself. First one is the survival stage. You're struggling to survive. Then you can have the growth stage in which, little by little you started growing. Then comes the profit stage when you start seeing, that financially you are being more solid. And ultimately the transition of the practice in which now you have built the practice of your dreams. Now, what's really important here to embrace is the fact that, as I said, it's not necessarily linear. You can be in profit, and if you don't do your homework, you can go back to survival. But the bottom line, regardless of where you are in practice, this new vision or this vision that I'm here sharing with you, and we're going to have some time for Q&A now, holds true no matter which stage you're at. You got to understand your patient's changing needs. You got to nurture your team, and you got to focus on consistent execution. Now, the name of the game in that article that I wrote, and you'll notice here that there's a nice stream in the back of the slide. I introduced the concept of flow. And flow, of course, is something we all understand what it means. But when it comes to team building, I want to suggest that we utilize flow as an acronym. An acronym that stands for focus on letting others win. And this holds true to everybody in your organization. Because when you focus on letting others win, everybody wins by default. And when that happens, it's interesting. You will notice at some point that you're lucky when you're the dumbest person in the room And when you surround yourself with people that are smarter than you, that's when you're really, really flowing. And so just to wrap up, I want to share with you what's the writing on the wall that's in my office that I read every single day that I walk here. So that it's a powerful reminder for me of not being interesting, but of being interested. The world is giving us answers every day, and we need to learn to listen. And I'm going to share with you real quickly a few additional walls in our office. Reminders of who we are, reminders of what we do. You know, remember we spoke about the ideal team player, humble, hungry, and smart. And it's an I there because in Spanish, and of course in Mexico we speak in Spanish, smart is spelled with an I as in intelligent. The next thing I spoke to you about is being good at asking questions. So we promote that everybody here comes in and has probing questions on how we can improve, on how do we do things. This just elevates who we are every single day. It becomes, you know, a continuum of growth. Now, before I go to my last slide, I want to share with you something that was introduced at Spear during our all hands meeting. And as I said, we're having now virtual meetings with all the staff, over 200 people. And Kaleem Manji, who happens to be our phenomenal CEO, shared with us a new statement on commitment to diversity and inclusion that was put together by the team. And it reads like this: Spear Education deeply values diversity and what it brings to our communities and our organization. Everyone is welcome here, regardless of how you look, your physical abilities, where you come from, where you were born, what you believe in, how you identify, who you love, how you think, and whether or not you have served. We seek to create a culture where each person feels heard, supported, and engaged in a positive way, because we are all allies and advocates for our shared humanity. So with that, once again, I'm leaving you here with my email address and my Insta account. And feel free to reach out with questions or comments. And with that, I'm eager to invite my good friend Mark Bowes here and to have a nice discussion.
Thanks, Ricardo. Maybe you could stop. There we go. Perfect. So the first thing I want to say is that this has been a year of COVID. It's certainly been a year of webinars, and at the end, nearly the end of the year of webinars, in all honesty, that was one of the most satisfying, one of the most powerful, and one of the most useful webinars that I've sat through. And so honestly, I can just say thank you so much for that inspiration that I think we as a profession always need, to be reminded about really the solid job that we can do for our patients. And just to give you some background, because I don't think that you realized about the Stronger Together theme, which fitted in so nicely, because of the situation that we've been in. But actually, the reason that we chose this theme for Stronger Together, which was meant to be for our Congress, our National Congress, which was going to be this time of the year, was on the back of and you mentioned rugby as the sport that we follow in South Africa, at the back of the World Cup the year before, and the Springboks, whose team was built around the concept Stronger Together. In other words, there was no single player who was better than anyone else. And needless to say, as fairly rank outsiders, they went on to raise the trophy. So, and we figured we'd continue with that. So there's a few questions, and the one thing that I would like to say just quickly, if you don't mind, is that that I work closely with the DSD group and Christian, and a lot of what you said resonates, about the emotional connection, about also the value that we create, perceived value versus real value, and educating our patients or communicating with our patients so that they really understand the value that we're providing them. The one thing I think that dentists really have a problem with is built around the value issue of dentistry and what we're really doing, and understanding how to create the value that our patients need to be seeing on a day-to-day basis. So I don't know if you have any sort of thoughts on that.
Oh, for sure I do. The marketing world, which is fascinating, has this very well-known concept called the buyer's journey. We all become buyers all the time, right? And there's a very linear process within the buyer's journey. For people to start even entertaining the idea of value, there needs to be a problem that they have to acknowledge. The buyer's problem is deficiency of something. I have a deficiency of shoes. I have a deficiency of a watch, of a car, of a trip. I mean, that's us buying stuff, right? So the first thing is there's got to be an awareness of that problem. Without awareness of a problem, we're not even close to being able to start a conversation with anybody. The second stage of this buyer journey is the consideration of whatever solution we are going to be embarking on. Okay, so again, as a buyer, let's say you're going to be traveling. You talk to your travel agent, right? Okay, so where am I going to go? Well, we know today we're not going to be much in cruises, because of COVID, but there's so many. Let's say South Africa as a tourist destination. Let's say Italy as another tourist destination. Let's say Mexico as another tourist destination. And these are three potential options that, a European visitor has. And of course, there are traits about going to South Africa, which is fantastic. You get to go to beautiful cities. You get to see the nature. It's amazing. Wine country, etc. You go to Mexico, we have archaeology, blah, 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 right? The bottom line is, once you have your options, then you go to the third stage, which is the decision process. So I'm hoping my answer is not a long answer to your question, but ultimately, if we want to create value to our patients, we need first to make sure they're cognizant of the problem. And before we tell them of how wonderful we are, so that creates the value, we need to spend time creating awareness of what the problem is. And so when we talk about that emotional connection that you were talking about with DSD and whatnot, well, that is great, but that doesn't happen until, as I said, the patient is heard. Until we stop being interesting about how great we are, and we start being interested about what are the pains, the aches and pains of a patient. I find it, Mark, so remarkably game-changing when we listen to the patients, because we cannot have a single narrative to discuss value for dentistry. We need to be able to customize the narrative based on the patient's needs. And that's why when I talk about creating a vision, the first pillar is we need to understand our patients' changing needs. If we do that, then, as I said, it's very linear. But that is a prerequisite for us having a conversation, aspiring to communicate, with our patients, with vendors, with family members, with anybody. Does that make sense?
No, it makes great sense. I mean, I have to say that whenever I have certainly a new patient, the first part of the interaction is allowing the patient to tell me whatever they want to tell me, and it can be anything, but it's their opportunity for them to express whatever it is they want to express and whatever they would like me to help them with. And so it's an amazing thing.
But I'm so happy you mentioned the word, whenever I get a new patient. If I hear between the lines, I'm hearing implicitly that you're not new patients you already know. And as I said, there are changing needs. And sometimes when we think we know a patient, oh, you know, he'll never go for aesthetic veneers because he doesn't care about them. Well, you know, we're seeing in COVID, patients coming back asking for stuff that they didn't ask before, and they've been patients for 10 years or 15 years here. And so if we go through this notion of patients changing needs, guess what, Mark? Every single patient that walked through your door is a new patient, is a patient that needs to be re-enamored. Don't take for granted that you know who they are. Listen out, because your narrative, your storytelling will change based on, you know, the information that they give you. And that makes it fascinating. You know, when I during the lecture, I showed that picture of the dental chair and the therapist chair. I'm sure you agree with me if I ask you, you know, how much therapying are you doing to your patients lately? Right?
Yeah, a lot.
Based on stories that they're telling you because they trust you. Now, you know, it is so easy to build upon those stories to find value for the dentistry that we do.
Yeah, no, totally agree. You know, another one thing, and then I'm going to just quickly, there's basically there are no questions. Well, there are a few questions, but most of the people are just saying, wow, thank you so much for that lecture. But the one thing that I think is really amazing and that we need to also understand, apart from the team, going back to a team, and it was just really hit home on me on one of the nurses who works with me now, who's amazing. And she changed practice. And I was like, wow, because she told me for something like 15 years that she had worked for this person. They'd never once told them what a great job they did, you know, and I was like, well, you know, wow, you know, for me, that was just amazing. So, and in our practice, I make a point of telling everyone, if not every day, every other day, what a great job they're all doing, you know, and thank you so much for their help. And I tell you, just that little bit of recognition is something that just lifts everyone's spirits. And I think that sometimes is missed, that we take things for granted because we pay them salaries or because they work for us. And really, you know, that's something that I feel really quite strongly about.
I love that you're saying this, and knowing who you are, it doesn't surprise me one bit. And I've enjoyed, like, people should know, by the way, that you and I have grown close through social media and through WhatsApp. We haven't never met, but yet I feel enormous respect of you, because, you know, it's interesting how at this day and age, we get to know who we are by our going back to consistency, what we post, you know, whether it's just a picture or a thought, you know, and our values are so easily read through what we post. And so, as I said, it doesn't surprise me that you're talking about this, and it doesn't surprise me, you know, that you acknowledge your staff, because that's something that I could very easily see, you know, through the Mark that I know, you know, from Instagram, from WhatsApp, from Facebook, which is a good part about social media. We can talk about tons of not good things, but it allows us to meet incredible people like you. Yeah. Now, having said that, there's something that I need to share with you, which hopefully will cement the credibility of this lecture. And I don't want to come across as, you know, the optimist, the happily ever after guy. You know, the struggles don't only live in the past. The struggles live in the present, and most likely the struggles, not most likely, for sure, the struggles will live in the future. And when I talk about the struggles, I talk about the specific theme that we're talking about today, which is this: the stronger together, the power of a team. There are struggles from a team standpoint, which stem from so many things. Yesterday, one of my most esteemed members of our team had a breakdown with me. I mean, I was not empathetic enough with her, and I took for granted that she was going to do something, and she broke up in tears while I was putting together this lecture last evening. And I'm like, wow, this is perfect, because I'm going to get to talk about this tomorrow to our South African colleagues. This is not a happily after thing. And in fact, she smiled back at me, and I saw her this morning and says, guess what, dear? I'm going to be talking about you next hour. Because this right there tells us that the only way and the only place where the quote unquote perfect world lives is inside sheer imperfection. It is, we strive for, excellence. And, John Coyce taught me, who's one of my mentors back at the University of Washington, taught me, and he had this engraving on the wall, says that the definition of excellence, and excellence is the limitless ability to improve the quality of who we are and what we do. In other words, excellence means being better tomorrow than we are today, who we are today, and then the day after. Excellence is about recognizing, our pitfalls. It's about recognizing our imperfections and being perfectly okay with that. So you mentioned something so important about giving positive feedback to our staff members. Unfortunately, this is in Spanish, but before COVID, I did a TED Talk. And I chose, I was invited to do a TED Talk, a non-dental TED Talk, and I chose as a topic to talk about the paradox of feedback. How feedback may make us or break us. And so the importance of knowing how to give positive feedback, but of the same token, the importance of knowing how to give and to receive negative feedback. Because if we are in this so-called growth mindset, that's exactly what growth mindset is. In fact, what I talk about in this TED Talk is it's learning to live comfortably uncomfortable. And you being the sportsman that you are, always posting about your cycling and whatnot. I mean, people in sports know this all too well. I mean, people that want to excel need to live comfortably uncomfortable, right? The typical no pain, no gain. Well, the same deal holds true with feedback. The same holds true with professional growth. But we need to embrace the fact that, those things that bite us, that hurt us, will make us grow. And when we learn to live comfortably uncomfortable, then, going back to my other acronym that I shared with you, we learn to flow. In COVID,
Sure. If
we don't flow, we're dead. We see so many people, and we both are part of this world group of dentists that we chat all the time. It's a group of 200 plus dentists that are worldwide, and you're a part of that group, and I'm part of the group. And we hear all the time about people, commenting on colleagues that committed suicide, and are not going through easy times. And this holds true. For sure, our profession has a lot of that, because being a dentist, I've always said this, is tough. I mean, I get so annoyed when colleagues of ours hit the lecture circuit, the podium, and talk about dentistry as if it was simple. Dentistry is tough. I mean, and we have to be passionate about it, and we have to embrace that it's tough, and we have to enjoy it being tough. But we need to have, how should I say, a network that supports us. And that network has to do with family members, has to do with team members, has to do with colleagues. Going back to this whole notion of stronger together. And so to me, talking to you and seeing this background of stronger together, I have to give it to you guys in South Africa. You've made my day. I mean, you mentioned and you gave me accolades about the lecture. I can honestly tell you that lecturing today is probably one of the most special days I've had during all this webinar journey that I've embarked, upon the last, I lost the count. Probably it's been in the hundreds of lectures that I've given through Zoom or webinars or whatnot. But I have to say that having this conversation with you and talking about this has made it incredibly, incredibly special for me. So thank you so much.
That's very kind. And then the last thing that I'm going to say is that, for me, And as you can see that I've told you, I'm about to be a dentist for 40 years. I've tried to maintain one thing, and that's to keep a beginner's mind. In other words, to be unbiased, to have no preconceived concepts about things, to be curious, to be eager to learn, to be open-minded. Because, I think so often I see dentists who become experts, and they stick to the expert mind, and they just stop developing and things close down. And so to begin, to stay eager, to stay fresh, to stay young, to keep your mind open. But thank you so much anyway for that really amazing presentation. So we have some prizes this evening.
Hang on, just to frame this, what you just said, because as you know, I'm a man of quotes.
Yeah.
Just framing your last thought here. One of my favorite quotes is from Marcel Proust, and says that the true voyage of discovery does not consist to going to some extreme exotic lands, but to seeing things with renewed vision, which is exactly what you just said. Beautiful, I love it.
So we need 3 numbers from you between, and you know what was amazing is that during the whole webinar, the numbers went up to 380. And normally when we finish, people disappear. We still have nearly 370. So we only lost 10 people. So that just says everything to the quality of the presentation. So on the basis that the maximum number was 388, we need to give me 3 numbers from 1 to 388. Your call.
Okay, so let's start with 258.
Yep, that's one.
Let's go for 333.
Yeah,
and let's go,
and
and
one
let's
more.
go with, and let's go with 8. 08.
8, beautiful. Thank you, Ricardo, again, on behalf of SADA, really for adding value, keeping us stronger, opening our minds, letting us understand about how to face the challenges that COVID have thrown at us, and honestly, going back tomorrow, being stronger, which is what, the whole emphasis and theme of our kind of virtual meeting over these past 4 days has been, and what a great lecture to end with. So thanks so much again. My last task is just to give the 2 winners from last night. The first was a 50% discount on the Dale Miles 2-day course on CBCTs from SciVision. And that was worth 8,450 Rand, goes to Nadia Da Costa. And apparently there were 2, and to Simone Morkel. So Marilise will be in touch with you with those. So again, thank you so much. And we have with us our CEO, the boss of SADA, who did such a great job, I was telling you, with COVID, and they took the reins and honestly held our profession together. So I'm going to hand over to Casey to close the meeting. So thank you again, Ricardo. I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
It's over to you. Hi, Casey.
Hi. Thank you so much, Dr. Bowers. Stronger together indeed. Unfortunately, I couldn't join you for the beginning of this session, but I did catch up some of your presentation on YouTube. Very exciting indeed, and very valuable for the members. And indeed, we are stronger together. So my task really today is to thank all the speakers and all the facilitators of these 4 days, which is officially our ending of 2020, the year that has thrown so many ball curves to SADA, to everyone. But we are grateful that, again, we have, because of the great minds around us, we have managed to come together. And as much as this was territory uncharted, we have been able together to come out strongly. So I'm very excited in the way things have actually transpired. I want to thank the committee, CERCOM, which is led by Dr. Peters, for having made the opportunity for this platform to occur. And I want to thank specifically now for these 4 days, the SADASEC, our committee that deals with the speakers, led by Dr. Bowers. Thank you so much. If you can please tell the committee, we really appreciate the work that is done. For those that maybe you have missed our communication, we have just given you a sense of what you would have received at the SADA Congress had the SADA Congress gone the way it was planned. Now, can you see really the quality and the vastness and the diversity of information that you would have learned? Even these 4 days, I know that all of us have learned. So that's wonderful, and thank you so much. And we obviously thank the board for having provided guidance. I want to specifically indicate that today, this is our 59th CPD event for 2020. 59. We've done it all virtually. So this is wonderful. We've provided not only the education side, but for every member, if you wanted to gain your CPD points, we've provided more than ample opportunities. The 59 CPD events have collectively given us 50 clinical points and 14 clinical points, ethical points, I mean. So you can see that the opportunity actually existed. None of the SADA members and none of the dental profession this year should have an excuse of not having managed to have their quota for 2020. You can't. If for some reason you have missed some of the opportunities at the beginning, please send us an email and we will let you know how you can still complete some of the things online in order for you to get your points. I want to thank specifically now my team. Many a time what we see here when we get excited and everything goes well, there's a lot of planning that goes behind here, a lot of planning. There is a lot of IT support. Sometimes we've had people switching computers, and it's been amazing at the background. But I want to specifically say there's been a lot of our staff that have been involved over this period of 2020 with not sleeping and everything there. But specifically, I want to mention the following. They're not the only ones. I want to mention Norma. Norma, thank you so much for having been there in the background, running the Zoom meetings for the most part of 2020. I want to thank Tsepo as well in terms of ensuring the administration side of it, the certification, the gathering of the registrations, and ensuring that everything administrative from that perspective is okay, and also supporting from the background in making sure that the events run well. I want to thank Anne for exactly the same in terms of the marketing, the loading of the events and everything, as well as supporting from the background. And I want to thank Marlies. Marlies is the backbone of what has happened here, is the backbone of our events, and she's been in the background, thrown into the deep end because no one knew what was going to happen in 2020. We did not plan for this. Yet we needed to ensure that our members receive all the education that we can give to them. And Marlies rose to the occasion, and this is where we are. Marlies, we want to say thank you so much. And of course, we want to thank Dr. Metsing, Dr. Ntabiseng Metsing, who is the head of professional development. Your team has done wonders for 2020, and we want to say thank you and thank you very much. To all of those that have managed to attend 1 to 20, 1 to 59 CPD events, we want to thank you for joining. I know that we've been joined by people all over the world. I've received messages from Australia. I've received messages from the UK. I've received messages from New Zealand. I've received messages from the rest of Africa. So it's been a great, great, great year despite everything. So I just want to say thank you for the support that you have given us, and thank you for allowing us to take you to uncharted territories where we are able to do this. Having said this, and in my conclusion, I want to indicate to you that we are planning for 2020 Congress, and we're going to be giving, we do have the dates and everything. We will be announcing this very, very soon, and get ready for a great year ahead, despite all the challenges that we face. And I just want to say thank you, and thank you very much. And again, to Dr. Bowers for tonight, as well as being the chairperson of the SADA-SEC. Thank you so much for all the work that you have done. Thank you to everyone. And I wish, if I do not meet you again, I wish you all the best for 2020 and have a great year. I'm going to give it over back to Dr. Bowers to conclude. Thank you.
Thank you, Casey. I don't really have much more to say than other than thank you again to SADA for taking the reins through this difficult year and really guiding us as practitioners, as practice owners, as dentists, as hygienists, as team members through really a difficult time. And I feel that we've really come out of it stronger. And really, I feel that as a profession, really, we've showed our patients that we have really safe environments for them to come through all the things that we put in place. And the last thing I want to say is that I'm so looking forward to, I know this year is almost over, but the one thing I am looking forward to is the meeting in 2021. So, put it in your diaries because, we've got some plans that you will not be upset. You will be blown away with what we're planning. So thank you to everyone. Thank you, Casey, SADA, Marlies, everyone. You've said it all. And enjoy the rest of the year. Have a great holiday. Look after yourselves. And we'll see you next year.
Thank you so much.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.